Dear students, in the last lecture we studied about the synthesis of thyroid hormones and how they are released into the blood circulation when required. In today's lecture we'll continue with the mechanism of action of the thyroid hormones. In this figure you can see that the thyroid hormones act through the nuclear receptors, and T4 is also changed to T3. So once they get into the nucleus, they bind with their hormone receptor and they form a complex with retinoid X receptor, which then binds to the thyroid hormone response element, and they lead to the activation of the gene required for causing the formation of the messenger RNA, and the messenger RNA then causes the synthesis of new proteins. So this is the mechanism of action of thyroid hormones when they bind to their cells in the target tissues. Coming to the functions of the thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone has an important effect on growth, and they increase the rate of growth in the growing children, and they also cause growth and development of the brain in fetal life. And in the absence of thyroid hormone, the growth and development of the brain remains incomplete in the fetus. The effects on the carbohydrate metabolism include the uptake of glucose by the cells, enhanced glycolysis, enhanced gluconeogenesis, increased rate of absorption from the GI tract, and then increased insulin secretion. So they cause an increase in all aspects of carbohydrate metabolism. Effect on fat metabolism. Under the effect of thyroid hormones, the lipids are mobilized from the fat tissue. The thyroid hormones, they increase the free fatty acid concentration in the plasma, and they also accelerate the oxidation of free fatty acid by the cells. The effect on plasma and liver fats is that increased thyroid hormones concentration decreases the concentrations of cholesterol, phospholipids, and triglycerides in the plasma. So they increase the number of cholesterol receptors on the cells, and this leads to an uptake of these cholesterol in the liver cells, which then excretes it into the bile. So similarly, decreased thyroid hormone secretion greatly increases the plasma concentration of cholesterol, phospholipids, and triglycerides. So this is opposite to the effect by the increase of thyroid hormones, and this decreased thyroid hormone, they also cause excessive deposition of fat in the liver. The effects on the cardiovascular system include increased blood flow and cardiac output, and this is increased blood flow is because of increased metabolism in the tissues, and the cardiac output is secondary to this increased blood flow, that is the venous return. Then increased heart rate, and their effect on cardiac strength is initially to increase its strength, but with a prolonged and increased concentrations, it leads to cardiac muscle weakening. Effects on the respiratory system is that they increase the respiration, which increases the utilization of oxygen and formation of carbon dioxide, and this leads to an increase in the rate and depth of respiration. The effects on gastrointestinal tract include an increase in both secretion of the digestive juices as well as an increase in the motility of the GI tract. The effects on central nervous system includes an increase in the nervousness, anxiety complexes, and worry in these individuals which have increased thyroid hormone levels. And there is a presence of fine muscle tremor in these individuals, which is different from the tremor seen in the patients with cerebellar disease, and also different from the tremor which may be present in fever. And these individuals, because of high excitability of the neurons, they find it difficult to go to sleep. The effect on the sexual function includes that in men the lack of thyroid hormone is likely to cause loss of libido, and the excess may cause impotence. And in women, the lack of thyroid hormone, may cause certain disorders like menorrhagia, which is increased menstruation, polymenorrhea, and amenorrhea. So, decreased thyroid hormone in women may cause these disorders. Now, coming to the regulation of thyroid hormones, as we studied in the introduction to endocrinology, that most of the hormones, they are under the negative feedback mechanism of regulation. So similarly, the feedback control mechanisms in case of thyroid hormone also are operating under the negative feedback loops. So you can see in this diagram that the hypothalamus causes the release of thyrotropin-releasing hormone in the median eminence, and this then reaches the anterior pituitary gland by the hypothalamo-hypophysial portal blood vessels, and where it acts on the thyroid hormone producing cells called the thyrotropes, which causes the release of thyroid stimulating hormone. So thyroid stimulating hormone then acts on the thyroid gland, causing the hypertrophy and increased secretion of the thyroid hormones, and these thyroid hormone like thyroxine, it causes an increased metabolism in all the body cells, which then inhibit the secretion of both thyroid stimulating hormone as well as the thyrotropin releasing hormone. So this is typically this is a typical negative feedback mechanism operating in this regulation of the thyroid hormones, and it's necessary to keep this mechanism and the steps of regulation in mind to understand the thyroid disorders in which the levels of these different hormones it is disturbed. So let's now study the role of thyrotropin releasing hormone. And as he just mentioned, the thyrotropin releasing hormone is secreted by nerve endings in the median eminence of the hypothalamus. And from the median eminence, the thyroid releasing hormone is then transported to the anterior pituitary gland by way of the hypothalamic-hypophysial portal blood system. So once it reaches the anterior pituitary gland, the thyrotropin releasing hormone, it binds with TRH receptors in the pituitary cell membrane, and this activates the phospholipase second messenger system inside the pituitary cells, causing the formation of the phospholipase C and causing the activation of other intermediary proteins, finally leading to the thyroid stimulating hormone release. So when this thyroid stimulating hormone secreted by the anterior pituitary cells, it is released in the blood circulation, it reaches the thyroid gland, where it acts on the receptors present on the cuboidal cells lining the follicles, and there it performs very important functions, and it binds thyroid stimulating hormone binds with specific TSH receptors present on the cuboidal cells, and this activates adenylyl cyclase enzyme, which increases the formation of cyclic AMP inside the cell. Now, this cyclic AMP acts as a second messenger to activate the protein kinase A, which causes phosphorylations throughout the cell. Now, these phosphorylations cause an increase in the secretion of thyroid hormones and in the growth of the thyroid glandular tissue itself. So, the actions or effects of thyroid stimulating hormone can be summarized into these points, including increased proteolysis of the thyroglobulin, increased activity of the iodide pump, increased iodination of the tyrosine, increased size and increased secretory activity of the thyroid cells, and finally increased number of thyroid cells by increasing the mitosis of the cells. So these are the important effects of thyroid stimulating hormone on the thyroid gland. Now, there's certain neurogenic stimuli which causes an increase in the release of the thyroid stimulating hormone, and they include the cold. So cold it causes the hypothalamus to increase the secretion of the thyrotropin-releasing hormone and the thyroid stimulating hormone, while excitement and anxiety causes a decrease in their secretion because of the activation of the sympathetic nervous system. So this is all for today's lecture. Inshallah, we'll continue with the thyroid disorders in the next lecture.